Hi, everyone. We're back. And once again, we have Dr. Hardt with us. And again, another exciting topic. So, Dr. Hardt, one of the questions that I often hear from people is, okay, does the alpha training actually last after I walk out the door? They're going through the training. They've spent the 5 or 7 days with the trainer dedicated and have raised their alpha waves to levels that they never even probably thought possible. What happens after they walk out? Is this actually going to last?
There's a lot of evidence to indicate that it lasts and that it influences and gets on people around the trainees who actually didn't even do the training. We have a scientific publication in I believe, Psychology and Psychiatry, a British journal, talking about the influence on society, culture, economic and social impact on the people around the training. So we can talk about that, but there are many ways that we can look at how the training lasts and the things that you could do if you wanted to undermine the longevity of your training result, like eating onions and garlic and caffeine and having nicotine and alcohol. You could undermine the results. So the most compelling evidence comes from a double-blind study that I did. I wrote, won, and then directed a large federal grant from the U.S. National Institute of Mental Health. It was entitled Anxiety and Aging, Intervention with EEG Alpha Feedback. And the target population was women who were from 60 well up into their 80s. And anxiety is higher in women than it is in men at every age. And it goes up with age in both men and women. And in women, it goes up faster. So by selecting women over 60, I was wanting to see if the training would be effective in the group most at risk for anxiety. And turned out it was very effective, in the same effectiveness as in college-age males. And so the study was designed in such a way that we did personality testing twice before the training, a week apart, and we also then tested them immediately after the training. With 2 pre-measures and 1 post, you can detect and correct statistically for any regression to the mean that may occur on any of the personality scales. But then I wrote into the grant the ability to bring the people back at 6 months after their training, and again 12 months after their training for retesting. And we were hoping that, maybe we only had like a 50% reduction in the benefits 6 and 12 months out. But to our absolute astonishment and delight, we found that when we tested people at 6 months, they were better than they were immediately after the training. And of course, they were much better then than they were before the training. And so while we're scratching our head and trying to figure out how this could be, another 6 months went by, and we brought the people back for their 12-month testing and found that they were better still. They were further improved at 12 months than compared to 6 months. And so I like to have models, explanatory models for especially extraordinary results. And so one of the things that I came up with was, when you fundamentally change how you see the world, how you interact with the world, this is going to bring about big changes in you. For example, if somebody sees themselves as a victim, they're probably not going to be out starting companies and building fortunes. And so how you see yourself has a big impact on what happens to you. And so a simple example would be, let's say somebody was born colorblind, and all of their life they had just seen in black and white and shades of gray. But then maybe there's a miracle surgery, or they go to the sacred water at Lourdes and put the water in their eyes, and presto, changeo, now they can see colors. Well, the world is going to be fabulously interesting. Flowers and sunsets are going to be showstoppers for months afterwards. But it's also going to change the way they live. For example, going to the supermarket, instead of in the black and white world, buying a box of this and a can of that, they're now going to be drawn by the colors of the fresh fruits and vegetables, and they're going to buy and eat a healthier, perhaps more organic diet. And so their internal biochemistry is going to begin to change. Or when they go to the closet to get dressed, instead of putting on garish colors that cause people to avoid them like a freak show, now they're going to dress in a color coordinated way. And so their circle of friends is going to grow, expand, and change. And over time, this one change in perception, going from a black and white world to a world with color, it's going to redo just about everything in their lives. How they eat, how they dress, maybe what they do for recreation, what they do for work, all of this can change, and they will profoundly alter their lives as a result. And so when in the alpha training, people come to have a more accurate perception of themselves, their emotions, for example, it's understood that IQ, as important as it is, only accounts for 10, maybe maximum 20% of a person's success in life. If you're brilliant, but you can't get along with people, you can't have employees, you can't hold a job, you can't find investors. And so the master skill of success is now recognized to be EQ, or emotional intelligence quotient. And that is about 60% of your success in life. And we have demonstrated in published research that there are big increases in emotional intelligence as a result of the Biocybernaut alpha training. In fact, we have the single and the double, they're both 7 days. In the double, there's bigger increases in emotional intelligence than there are in the single. They're both 7 days, but in the double, people go into the chamber twice each day. And so they have more time to interact with the feedback. And so it's possible for people to improve their emotional structure as a result of the Biocybernaut alpha training, their accuracy of perception of their own emotions and their ability to control them, and then their accurate perception of other people's emotions, which then gives them the ability to interact with people in a more informed way. For example, if you take people who are Asperger's, they don't read other people's emotions. And as kids, they get beat up a lot, because if a bully comes up to an Asperger kid and goes threatening, the Asperger kid, instead of a normal kid, might cower a little and then avoid being beaten up. But the Asperger's kid doesn't perceive this as an aggressive act and responds in a more or less ordinary way and gets beat up. And so to the extent that you can accurately read other people's emotions, you have the ability then to have better, more productive social interactions with them. And so part of the enduring quality of the training is the fact that you gain an ability to read your own emotions better, to control your own emotions better, and to read other people's emotions better, and to direct your social interactions with people, being mindful of their present emotions. And so there are many ways in which the training lasts. Now, there are ways that you can sabotage yourself or can be sabotaged by others. I can tell you a story about, in the mid-'80s, I ran a migraine clinic within the Biocybernaut training operation. And migraineurs are more common among women than they are men. So what I did was I selected a dozen of the worst migraineurs. These are people who would have 3 migraines a month at least, and each one, they would be in bed for 5 to 7 days in such pain they couldn't get out. These people are, they're in enormous pain. So I designed a 10-day program for them, 7 days, and then 3 days off, and then 3 more days. Now, in addition to the brainwave training, we also did EMG and temperature training. EMG is muscle electromyogram. So we taught them how to relax their muscles and also how to warm their hands for about the first 4 or 5 days. The reason being that migraineurs are in such pain that they basically shut off, to the extent they can, inputs from their body. It's like a functional deafferentation. And so they are literally pretty disconnected from their body. And to get them to reconnect with their body, we gave them temperature training where they'd learn to warm their hands, and muscle relaxation training where they'd learn to reach out to their muscles and command them to relax. And so we had a 100% success rate with these dozen migraineurs. They went from having at least 3 debilitating 5 to 7 day migraines a month to none. Now, they did have to observe certain protocols. It's, for example, known that if a migraineur gets chilled and blood vessels constrict, that could bring on migraine, or cheese or red wine. So they did have to observe certain protocols. But there was one sad case of a woman whose husband provoked her back into having migraines. She lived in Southern California. She had been a beauty, a blonde beauty, and they had a big luxurious home on the beach. And so as a blonde woman, she spent a lot of time in bathing suits on the beach. Not surprisingly, she got skin cancer. Well, skin cancer, she was not that appealing to her husband, who undertook to use these 5 to 7 day periods where she couldn't come out of the bedroom to have other women in the home for having affairs. And so when his wife recovered and was now not confined to the bedroom for the majority of the days of the month, it cramped his Lotharian style. And so he proceeded to stress her in various ways so that she had a relapse and went back into having migraines. So it's possible that a hostile environment can cause regression. Now, in terms of what you can do yourself, I'll tell a story about Chief Victor Buffalo, who was chief of the 4 Cree Indian tribes at Hobbema, which is a big reserve outside of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And after he had done his Alpha 4 training, he came to me, he said, "Jim, I have a confession." I go, "Chief, what's that?" He said, "Well, for my Alpha 1, I eliminated onions and garlic and alcohol and tobacco and all those things, as you requested. But after my Alpha 1 training, I went back to eating onions and garlic. Now, when I did my Alpha 2, I eliminated those things again. But after my Alpha 2, I did not go back to eating onions and garlic because I had become sufficiently aware that I could feel what they were costing me in terms of mental agitation." And so there is an example of somebody who, sort of had backsliding, but then after his Alpha 2, he went, "Oh my God, I can really feel the difference." Because onions and garlic will reduce your alpha waves and cause you to be mentally agitated and stressed. In most meditative traditions, especially yoga, urge that you eliminate onion and garlic because it's said to promote a rajasic temperament, which is ego activity and willfulness. And you can just ask, you can tell a slightly ethnic joke by saying that if you tie an Italian's hands behind his back, he can't talk because all of that onion and garlic is going to promote an agitated sort of gesticulating way of talking. And so there are things. Well, I also remember a guy who came from North Carolina. He was interested in having a Biocybernaut training center in North Carolina, and he had influential backers. So when he had been in the club business, which meant he was in the business of selling alcohol and women to male customers. And so he wanted to get out of that, and he wanted to get into something, shall we say, more holistic. And so he started pretty low in alpha. It was around 250 in his alpha scores. And but he worked hard during the week, and he did the work, and he got up to about 550 by the day 7. And now, because we were planning on doing work together, I had invited him to come on day 8 to do some shared feedback. And so my assistant, Maureen, came in an extra day, put electrodes on the guy, put him in the chamber. We started him while she was putting electrodes on me. And so we discovered that his alpha had dropped all the way back down to where it was on the first day. It was down in the 250s. And so when I was ready to go into the chamber, I said to him, "What's going on? What happened to you?" And he said, "Well, I didn't think it would matter, so I had 3 caffeinated sodas last night." And so people can, in fact, undermine their progress.
Sure. So it was interesting because I've noticed the secondhand elements during my training. When you talk about, it's almost like secondhand smoke can be detrimental to people, but the secondhand elements of coming through, especially when I came out of my Alpha 1 and my Alpha 2, of seeing how people around me could come off those vibrations almost. They always talk about in coaching, you think that you make a shift and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, everybody around me all of a sudden is nicer. Well, the reality is they're feeding off of your energy.
Yeah.
And it seems to be almost like what I would describe, Dr. Hardt, as a snowball-like effect, where, during your training, it's the start of a snowball. And then after the training, even it keeps progressing more and more and more, and you reap the benefits on and on.
Well, we did see in studying the 6-month follow-ups and the 12-month follow-ups in the federal grant that each individual's personality profile was continuing to improve. But it wasn't until work I did in Canada that I was able to document the benefits to people around the trainees. The scholarship sponsor would put up $6 million of personal money to provide trainings for people in his company and also for over 200 Canadian Aboriginals who, because of the cultural suppression, are as a people as much awash with post-traumatic stress disorder than any returning war veterans. He said, because he had his ear to the ground out in the reservations, and he was getting reports that indicated to him that people who just were around those people who had done the training were having benefits. So he asked me to design a study to see if this was the case. So what I did was I got permission from the trainees to survey their family members, their friendship networks, and for those that were employed, their coworkers. And so hundreds of questions, and including, because, these communities were, pretty disadvantaged. So we were documenting how much pushing and shoving, how much shouting and yelling, and things like that were going on. And that's, between brothers or between parents and children, or, parents and grandchildren, uncles. And just, there was a lot of physical abuse. You see this in abused communities, that they take it out on each other. Like Chief Willie Littlechild once said, if you've been abused and you haven't forgiven, you will become an abuser. And so what we found was that there were so many benefits. Well, what we did is we took this survey data and we shared it with anthropologists and psychologists and ethnologists and cultural anthropologists. And they all concluded that it was obvious that there were benefits to the people around those that did the training. And so we coined a term, protagious. A cold or a flu is contagious, and the alpha training is protagious.
I like that.
It gets on people who just interact with those who have done the training. We had someone do the training recently, and I had a chance to talk with this person's wife a day or so after the training. And she said that she did a lot of hard work, that she was actually crying, and, their relationship has enormously improved. And so just being around people doing the training, you'll get it.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, Dr. Hardt, once again, thank you for all the work that you do and all the work you've done and the research you brought to all of us. It's truly a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Hi, I'm Tony Robbins. Listen, if you are looking to improve your brain, your psyche, your ability, your emotions, your ability to really maximize your performance, and you want to really dig into your brain, my dear friend, Dr. Jim Hardt, and his Biocybernaut program is extraordinary. I've been through it myself. My wife Sage has, members of my family have, and we found it to be truly extraordinary. But it is not for the faint at heart. Unless you're dead serious about really taking things to the next level, don't bother. We went through the Alpha program designed to maximize your ability to create alpha waves. And it was challenging and it was incredibly rewarding. And I'd recommend it to anybody serious about improving the quality of their lives or including the quality of their family lives as well. So check out Cybernaut, check out Dr. Jim Hardt. And if you do, I think you'll be really, really pleased. And the entire time you are learning to think and how you think these electrodes create sounds. And you learn how to put yourself in the zone of alpha. But it's a bitch. It's horrible. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody that wants easy experiences, but I'd recommend it to anybody that wants to grow immensely. And by the first day, I'm like, who do I got to shoot to get out of this thing? Oh, it's me. I'm the one that did this shit. Right? But by the end of the week, all three of us were able to go into this state of alpha. And if you're familiar with alpha, the best way I can describe alpha is there's no problem that can't be solved in alpha. Because every problem that we have was created by us.
Thank you for being here and absorbing this information about the science of brainwaves and about the stories of people whose lives have been beneficially altered, improved by doing brainwave training at Biocybernaut. And now I'm reaching out to you to invite you to come and be a part of the Biocybernaut adventure. Biocybernauts are to inner space what astronauts are to outer space. So come and adventure with us. And if you'd like to leave a comment on the videos, you can do that, or there's a link you can click if you'd like to learn more. We welcome you to Biocybernaut.